What we're going to briefly discuss is some of the changes in the backlight controls that you'll see in the 2015 models, because the voltage and the response of the inverter has changed for the most recent models versus previous models that you've worked on before. The backlight circuit, each bar of backlights or group of backlights has its own individual return to ground, which is brought up in the information that we've discussed so far. You can check the voltage on each one of those and monitor that return voltage. That's going to tell you multiple things depending on what your symptom is. Now we'll move to the power supply and look at some of the voltages coming off of the return lines for the inverter. Now, a quick way to determine whether the LEDs are responsive, if they're too dim, if you isolate what segment of LEDs is not performing correctly, say you've got a dark section of the picture. In this test method, what we're going to do if we suspect a defective field effect transistor on the inverter that's not responding to control commands to control the bias to ground for that group of LEDs. For most of the 2015 models, you need a 1K ohm resistor to put between that return line and ground. What we're essentially doing is doing that field effect transistor's job for it. And we're bypassing that field effect transistor. Now, if that particular segment of LEDs brightens up, then you know that the panel is good and the LEDs themselves will respond to changes in ground biasing. Now you know that your inverter has an issue with controlling that segment of LEDs. One other thing that we're seeing on some of the 2015 models is this LED. We have a chart that will show you, that will tell you how many blinks and what it may indicate. As I mentioned earlier about dimming information, your dimming information is coming out of the main board or it can come out of the inverter. A lot of the new ones, new 2015s, is coming out of the main board. Absence of PDIM is going to cause this LED to blink, in this case, say 7 times. First thing you need to do is make sure you're getting dimming information from the main board. If you're absent the dimming information, or if the inverter is not processing the dimming information, then you can test at least the inverter by going through a 1K ohm resistor to ground for each segment of the LEDs and make sure they light up, which would simulate no LED load. The voltage coming out of the inverter will rise as it normally does to the standard output voltage, but then it will rise a little above that normal output voltage. When there is no load on the inverter, again referring to that chart, we're getting 3 blinks on the LED, which is trying to tell you that the inverter doesn't sense a load. But the output voltage of the inverter will change dramatically. In some of the new 2015 models, the output voltage can actually climb to its normal height or normal voltage level, then go to roughly 200 volts or above. When you're checking the voltage for PDIM to make sure it's present when your LED indicates that you're missing PDIM information, make sure you refer correctly to the chart that's on the power supply as to what pin PDIM is. In some of the newer units, you'll have a vertical sync line or V-sync, clock line, and a data line. Those are being used by the main board to control local dimming information and data transfer. PDIM is still affecting your global dimming for your overall picture dimming. That voltage, in this case it's on pin 3, and the voltage is running 3.5 volts. That voltage can be as low as 0.15 volts, just a little under 1/10 of, or just a little over 1/10 of a volt. That variation in voltage is because of where the customer may have the backlight set in the customer's menu. If it's set to 0, it's going to be at its lowest voltage level, just over 0.1 volt. If they're set to 100%, then it'll be roughly 3.5 volts. So that voltage variation is going to be there, but you're looking for voltage presence. If that voltage is extremely low, then check the customer's menu and see if they've got the backlights turned down to 0. We hope this information helps you with some of your troubleshooting and pre-screening with some of these related issues. Thank you for attending.